Hello future doctors, welcome back to Conquer Pathology with Dr. P. I am Dr. P and today we are tackling a chapter that is not just about small adults. Pediatric pathology is a different universe. The diseases we see in infancy and childhood are biologically distinct from what we see in adults. Today's roadmap will be the big three competencies, PA 11.1, congenital anomalies and the heavy hitter, the cystic fibrosis, PA 11.3, when metabolism fails, lysosomal storage diseases, Tay-Sachs, Niemann-Pick and Gaucher, and PA 11.2, the small round blue cell tumors, neuroblastoma, Wilms tumor and retinoblastoma. We are going to use mnemonics and we will integrate this with anatomy and pediatrics. Let's dive in. Let's begin with congenital anomalies and cystic fibrosis. First things first, when a baby is born with a defect, it's not always a genetic mutation. For your viva, you need to master these four terms, the mechanisms of error. Malformation. This is an intrinsic error. The blueprint was wrong from the very start. Think, bad plants equal a bad build. Disruption. Here everything was going fine and then something destroyed it. It's a destructive error. Deformation. This is due to an extrinsic force. Imagine an external force is squishing the fetus because there isn't enough space to grow. Sequence. The domino effect. One primary event triggers a chain reaction. It's all connected. Let's dive a bit deeper to make sure you have this clear. Malformation. As I said, the plan was flawed. The classic example here is cleft lip. Disruption. This is secondary destruction. A classic example is amniotic bands, the fibrous bands that can amputate a limb that was otherwise forming perfectly. Deformation. Physical crowding. Think of clubfoot caused by the uterus being too crowded. The key takeaway here is malformations are genetic or embryological errors. Deformations and disruptions are mechanical errors. Now let's look at the sequence. Think of it as one domino falls, knocking down the others. For your exams, don't memorize the list of symptoms, instead memorize the first domino. If you know the first event, you can deduce the rest. Let's apply that to the most famous example, the Potter sequence. The first domino here is renal agenesis. The baby has no kidneys. No kidneys means no urine is produced. Since fetal urine makes up amniotic fluid, this leads to oligohydramnios or low amniotic fluid. Without that cushion of fluid, the fetus gets compressed. This leads to pulmonary hypoplasia, lungs don't develop, and a flat face. Think of a fish in a leaking bag. If the bag leaks, the water is gone and the fish gets squished. Alright, shifting gears to the heavy hitter, cystic fibrosis. I call this the multi-system wrecking ball. It is the most common lethal genetic disease in white populations. It's an autosomal recessive disorder that affects exocrine glands across the entire body. Look at the diagram. It hits the liver, lungs, pancreas, and reproductive organs. Here's the cheat code for the genetics. You need to know this spot. It's on chromosome 7. Cystic fibrosis equals chromosome 7. The gene is CFTR. The most common mutation is F508 deletion. This is a deletion of phenylalanine at position 508. Fundamentally, this is a protein folding defect. The misfolded protein is identified by chaperones and degraded before it ever reaches the cell membrane. Let's visualize the pathogenesis. Think of the chlorine door. In normal conditions, the door opens and chloride exits the cell smoothly. In cystic fibrosis, the door is jammed or missing. Result? Chloride is trapped inside the cell. Look at the diagram. All those green chloride ions are stuck inside. So what happens next? The trap. Chloride is trapped inside. Attraction. Sodium rushes in to be with the chloride. Osmosis. Water follows the sodium into the cell. The outcome is extracellular space loses its water. We are effectively turning water into glue. You get dehydrated, thick, gooey sludge that blocks everything. Now let's see what the glue does to the organs. First, the lungs. The airway gets stretched and jammed because the mucus can't clear. This leads to bronchiectasis. Thick mucus is a playground for bacteria. You get recurrent infections with Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Staph aureus, and Burkholderia cepacia. Next are the pancreas and intestines. In pancreas, the ducts get plugged. The enzymes can't get out, so they start to digest the pancreas itself. Consequence is malabsorption, specifically deficiencies in vitamins A, D, E and K and steatorrhea, which is bulky greasy stools. Intestine. In newborns, the first stool or meconium is too thick. This causes an obstruction known as meconium ileus. Moving on to the liver and reproductive system. In liver, the bile ducts get plugged with mucus leading to biliary cirrhosis. Reproductive. This is crucial. The vas deferens is often absent or blocked. It results in azoospermia. This causes infertility in 95% of males with cystic fibrosis. Now pay attention to the exception, the skin. Here the mechanism is flipped. The sweat ducts are unable to reabsorb chloride. It results in salty sweat. The clinical sign here is the maternal kiss sign. Mothers will say, "My baby tastes salty when I kiss him." So how do we confirm it? We use the diagnostic cheat code, the sweat chloride test. A result of high chloride in sweat, more than 60 milliequivalents per liter, is diagnostic. Remember, this is a protein folding defect. The cellular chaperones spot the error and trash the protein. Let's wrap up with my high yield summary table. Screenshot this. In lungs, thick mucus causes bronchiectasis and infections, like Pseudomonas. In pancreas, plugged ducts lead to malabsorption and vitamin A, D, E, K deficiency. In intestine, thick stool cause meconium ileus. In liver, plugged bile ducts cause biliary cirrhosis. In reproductive system, there is absent vas deferens causing infertility, and in the skin, failed reabsorption causes salty sweat, which is diagnostic. That's it. You have now conquered congenital anomalies and cystic fibrosis. Let's move on to part 2 of our pediatric series, lysosomal storage diseases. This corresponds to competency PA 11.3. To understand the disease, we first need to understand the machinery. Think of the lysosomes as the cell's recycling plant. Panel A, normal physiology. In a healthy cell, enzymes act like workers. They take complex molecules or substrates, shred them, crush them, and recycle them. Panel B, the pathology. Now look at what happens in disease. The enzymes go on strike. They are missing or defective. The result is the trash or metabolic substrates piles up inside the lysosome. The consequence is the factory swells and eventually bursts. So the pathogenesis equation is simple. Enzyme failure leads to substrate accumulation, causing cellular dysfunction. Now we are focusing on the big three you need for your exams. I've mapped them out here side by side. Tay-Sachs. The defect is hexosaminidase A. The buildup is GM2 ganglioside. The key feature is it hits the CNS but spares the liver or spleen. Niemann-Pick, type A or B. The defect is sphingomyelinase. The buildup is sphingomyelin. Unlike Tay-Sachs, this causes massive hepatosplenomegaly. Gaucher disease. The defect is glucocerebrosidase. The buildup is glucocerebroside. This one hits the bone marrow and causes massive organ enlargement, but crucially, no cherry red spot. Let's zoom in on Tay-Sachs disease. I call this the ganglioside gridlock. The problem here is hexosaminidase A deficiency. The result is GM2 ganglioside accumulates in the neurons. The neurons swell up, and we call this neuron ballooning. This leads to severe CNS degeneration. Look at the text in red. No hepatosplenomegaly. It is strictly a CNS issue. Tay-Sachs lacks hexosaminidase. Also, Sachs sounds like 6, which means hex. Easy, right? Next up, Niemann-Pick disease. This is the foamy failure. The problem is sphingomyelinase deficiency, and the result is sphingomyelin accumulates. This leads to formation of foam cells. These are lipid-laden macrophages that look foamy. Clinical highlight is, unlike Tay-Sachs, here you see massive hepatosplenomegaly. The mnemonic here is no man picks, Niemann-Pick, his nose with sphinger, sphingomyelinase. Number 3, the Gaucher disease, the crumpled crisis. Problem here is glucocerebrosidase deficiency, and the result is glucocerebroside accumulates. You see Gaucher cells. Look at the texture. It looks like crumpled tissue paper or crumpled silk. you see this weird crinkled cytoplasm. This affects the bone marrow. Gaucher starts with G, so does glucocerebrosidase. Visualize a crumpled Gucci dress for that crumpled silk appearance. For your viva, they will ask you to describe the cells. Here's the showdown. Tay-Sachs, balloon neurons. They are distended with world's lysosomes. Think onion skin. Niemann-Pick, foam cells. These have vacuolated cytoplasm. Think soap bubbles. Gaucher, you see Gaucher cells. These have a striated cytoplasm. Think wrinkled tissue paper. Let's integrate this with other subjects. Pediatrics, Tay-Sachs. The baby is normal at birth. At 6 months they start to regress or lose milestones and develop a startle reaction. By 2 to 3 years they become blind and pass away. Pharmacology, Gaucher. Gaucher type 1 is compatible with long life. Why? Because we have enzyme replacement therapy. We can inject the missing enzyme. This is a direct link between pathology and pharmacology. Before we finish, let's lock it in with the master mnemonics board. Tay-Sachs or 6 is hexosaminidase. Niemann-Pick, sphingomyelinase. Gaucher, Gucci dress, crumpled silk. Cherry red spot, yes for Tay-Sachs and Niemann-Pick, never for Gaucher. Now let's enter the final and most clinically critical part of our pediatric series, tumors of infancy and childhood. This covers NMC competency PA 11.2. My goal here is to give you a framework to distinguish the 3 major small round blue cell tumors that you will see in your exams and your practice. Let's conquer this. First, we need to set the rules of engagement. Cancer in kids is not the same as cancer in adults. In adults, we mostly see carcinomas. These are of epithelial origin, think skin, lung, colon. In kids, we see sarcomas, mesenchymal or blastomas embryonal. These tumors are primitive and undifferentiated. Under the microscope, they appear as small round blue cell tumors. When you see small round blue cells in a child, think primitive. We are going to fight 3 main antagonists today. I call them triad of terror. Neuroblastoma, the sympathetic tumor. Wilms tumor, the nephroblastoma, and retinoblastoma, the retinal tumor. Let's break them down one by one. Boss battle number 1, neuroblastoma. These arise from neural crest cells, specifically the sympathetic ganglia and the adrenal medulla. 40% are in adrenal medulla, but they can pop up anywhere along the sympathetic chain. The clinical signs are blueberry muffin baby. This refers to cutaneous metastases that look like blue or purple nodules. In lab, you will find catecholamines in the urine, VMA and HVA. Look at the diagram. Neuroblastoma doesn't respect boundaries. It sees the midline and says, Pushparaj, main jhukega nahi saala. Neuroblastoma fights dirty by crossing the midline. This is a massive clue. Now let's look under the microscope. This is high yield for your practicals. Homer Wright rosettes. Look at the image. You see a circle of tumor cells surrounding a center of pink neurofibrillary material. Think of it like pink candy floss in the center. There is no lumen or no hole, just pink fluff. The genetics determine the outcome. The gene is NMC. We look for NMC amplification. The more copies of NMC you have, the worse the prognosis. It's a direct correlation. High amplification equals high risk. Boss battle number 2, Wilms tumor or nephroblastoma. This is the most common renal tumor in children. It comes from nephrogenic rests. Clinically, you see a huge abdominal mass. The classic history is mother discovers it while bathing the child. Unlike neuroblastoma, Wilms tumor respects boundaries.
Control.
It usually does not cross the midline. Microscopy here is unique because it tries to build a kidney but fails. It has a triphasic pattern. Blastomal, sheets of small blue cells, the primitive part. Stromal, fibrocystic or myxoid tissue, the support. An epithelial component in the form of abortive tubules or glomeruli. Look at the slide. It's trying to form a tubule, but it can't quite finish the job. Boss battle number 3, retinoblastoma. It originates in the retina. The clinical sign you see is leukocoria. This is white pupillary reflex or cat's eye reflex in flash photography. Here we see Flexner-Wintersteiner rosettes. Unlike Homer Wright, these have a central lumen. It is a white hole, not pink candy floss. It is a true rosette. How does retinoblastoma happen? You must explain Knutson's two-hit hypothesis. Knutson said, one mutation isn't enough. You need the second hit. The target is RB gene on chromosome 13. In familial or heritable disease, the child is born with the first hit in every cell or germline. The second hit happens later. The result is bilateral tumors, both eyes are affected. Whereas in sporadic case or non-heritable case, the first hit is random chance and the second hit is also random chance. The result is unilateral tumor, only one eye is affected. Let's zoom out and connect the dots. This is how you score top marks. Anatomy. Neural crest migration explains why neuroblastoma appears in the neck, chest or abdomen. Physiology. The chloride shift concept helps you understand cystic fibrosis from part 1. Biochemistry. Lysosomes and enzyme kinetics are the foundation for storage diseases from part 2. Everything is connected. Mission accomplished. I know remembering all genes and chromosomes is painful. But stick with the mnemonics and you will conquer it. Here are your take-home pearls to memorize. Neuroblastoma crosses midline, Homer right rosettes, pink center and MIC gene. Wilms tumor does not cross midline, triphasic histology, WT1 gene. Retinoblastoma, leukocoria, flexner intestinal rosettes, white center, RB gene 2-hit hypothesis. That's an excellent work today. Study hard, integrate your subjects and remember, pathology is the bridge between basic science and clinical medicine. See you in the next one. I've created a high-yield PDF cheat sheet of all these tables and flowcharts. The link is in the description. Good luck studying.